start your morning with this thought. Most people wake up and immediately look for problems. But what if today you chose something different? What if, instead of asking, "What's wrong?" you asked, "What am I grateful for?" Because the direction of your life is determined by the first thoughts you allow into your mind each morning. The moment you wake up defines the direction of your day. The very first breath you take in the morning is not ordinary. It is a mercy. A silent gift that many were denied while you were chosen to receive it again. Before your feet touch the ground, before your mind begins to wander into worries, there is a sacred moment, pure, untouched, and full of possibility. Most people rush past this moment without realizing its power. They wake up and immediately carry yesterday's burdens into today. The mind fills with pressure, fear, and unfinished thoughts, and without noticing, they have already decided the emotional direction of their entire day. But there is another way to begin. In that quiet space between sleep and action, when your heart is calm and your mind is still forming its first thoughts, you are closest to awareness and perhaps closest to your Creator. That moment is not empty. It is an invitation to recognize, to reflect, to be grateful. Gratitude in that instant becomes more than a feeling. It becomes alignment. When you open your eyes and acknowledge that you have been given another day, you are not just thinking positively, you are recognizing a blessing, a gift that was written for you before you even understood its value. There are people who went to sleep with plans, with dreams, with unfinished conversations, and they did not wake up. And yet you did. Your heart continues to beat. Your lungs continue to breathe. Your life continues to unfold. And if you pause long enough to feel that truth, something shifts inside you. The weight you carried yesterday begins to feel lighter. The stress that once felt overwhelming loses its grip, because in the presence of genuine gratitude, fear begins to fade. Anxiety begins to loosen. The mind no longer starts in chaos, it starts in peace. When you consciously choose gratitude at the beginning of your day, you are training your mind to see what is present, not what is missing. You are teaching your heart to recognize abundance, even in simplicity, a roof over your head, air in your lungs, another chance to try again. And slowly, almost invisibly, your entire perception changes. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, think differently. Not because your problems disappeared, but because your focus has shifted. What once felt like pressure now feels like responsibility. What once felt like loss now feels like a lesson. Gratitude does something profound. It connects you to purpose. It reminds you that your life is not random, that every breath holds meaning, that every morning carries a message. You are still here for a reason. And when that realization touches the heart deeply, it awakens something emotional, something real. A sense of humility, a sense of awareness, a quiet understanding that life is fragile, temporary, and incredibly valuable. The tears you sometimes hold back, the silent prayers you whisper, the struggles no one sees, all of it begins to take on a different meaning when viewed through gratitude. Because even in hardship, there is growth. Even in delay, there is wisdom. Even in pain, there is a hidden form of guidance. So the way you begin your morning is not small. It is everything. Because the first thought you accept becomes the foundation of all the thoughts that follow. If you begin with pressure, your day will carry tension. If you begin with fear, your actions will carry hesitation. But if you begin with gratitude, your mind will carry strength, your heart will carry peace, and your soul will carry awareness. And in that state, even the ordinary begins to feel meaningful. Even the smallest blessings begin to feel significant. And even the hardest moments begin to feel purposeful. Gratitude trains your mind to see opportunity instead of lack.
The human mind is like a lens. It does not show you everything. It shows you what you consistently choose to look for.
And over time, that focus becomes your reality. When you wake up and immediately begin thinking about what is missing, what you don't have, what hasn't worked out, what went wrong, you are unknowingly training your mind to search for more of the same. Your awareness becomes wired to notice problems, delays, and disappointments. Even in moments filled with possibility, your attention will drift toward limitation. But when you begin your day with gratitude, something extraordinary begins to happen. You shift the lens. Instead of asking, "What's lacking?" your mind begins to ask, "What is already here?" Instead of noticing what failed, you begin to notice what remains. Instead of feeling empty, you begin to recognize fullness, even in small things. And this is not imagination, it is conditioning. The mind responds to repetition. What you consistently focus on becomes familiar, and what becomes familiar begins to feel true. So when gratitude becomes your starting point, your mind gradually becomes trained to recognize opportunity, even where others see nothing. You begin to notice chances where you once saw obstacles. You begin to see lessons where you once felt only pain. You begin to recognize doors, not just walls. And there is a deeper truth hidden within this. What you focus on is not only what you see, it is what you attract yourself toward, because your actions follow your attention. A person focused on lack hesitates, they doubt, they hold back. Their energy becomes heavy and their decisions become limited. Even when opportunity appears, they may not recognize it, or they may feel unworthy of it. But a person rooted in gratitude moves differently. They carry a quiet confidence, not because life is perfect, but because they have learned to see value where others overlook it. Their mind is open, their perception is sharp, and their awareness is alive. They begin to act on possibilities, to take steps forward, to trust that there is something ahead worth reaching for, and with each small action, new paths begin to appear. This is how focus expands your life. From a spiritual perspective, gratitude is a form of acknowledgement. It is a way of recognizing the blessings that have already been placed in your life. And when you acknowledge what you have been given, you develop a deeper connection with it. You begin to respect it, to use it, to grow it. There is a quiet wisdom in understanding that what is appreciated increases in value within your life. Not always in material form, but in meaning, in depth, in impact. The person who appreciates their time begins to use it wisely. The person who appreciates their skills begins to improve them. The person who appreciates their life begins to live it more fully. And as this awareness deepens, your emotional world begins to change. You feel less deprived and more grounded, less anxious and more present, less fearful and more hopeful, because your mind is no longer trapped in comparison or scarcity. It is anchored in recognition that you have been given something, recognition that you are not empty, recognition that within your current reality, there are seeds of growth waiting to be noticed. And once you begin to see those seeds, you cannot unsee them. Opportunities that once felt invisible begin to stand out. Moments that once felt ordinary begin to feel meaningful. Paths that once felt closed begin to reveal small openings. All because your focus changed. And this is the quiet power of gratitude. It does not instantly change your circumstances, but it transforms how you see them. And when your perception changes, your decisions change. When your decisions change, your direction changes. The world around you may remain the same, but your experience within it becomes entirely different. Because where your focus goes, your energy follows. And where your energy flows, your life begins to grow. Repeated thoughts of appreciation reshape your mindset. Whether you realize it or not, your mind is being trained every single day. Not occasionally, not randomly, but continuously. Every thought you repeat, every emotion you dwell on, every perspective you hold on to, it is all shaping you, quietly, steadily, and powerfully. The mind does not stay neutral. It absorbs, it adapts, and then it reflects back to you what it has been taught to believe. So if a train to believe. So if a person wakes up each day thinking about stress, fear, and what is missing, their mind becomes familiar with tension. It begins to expect difficulty. It starts preparing for problems even before they arrive. Over time, this becomes their default state, not because life is always difficult, but because their thinking has been conditioned to see it that way. But the same principle works in another direction. When you intentionally repeat thoughts of appreciation, when you remind yourself daily of what you have been given, what is still working in your life, you begin to reprogram your internal world. At first it may feel small, almost insignificant, but repetition carries power. The thoughts you return to again and again do not remain surface level, they sink deeper. They move into your subconscious, into the part of your mind that influences your reactions, your emotions, your decisions. And this is where real change begins. Because once gratitude becomes familiar to your mind, it no longer feels forced. It becomes natural. Your thinking starts to shift automatically. In moments where you once felt frustration, you begin to pause. In situations where you once reacted with negativity, you begin to respond with awareness. This is conditioning, and there is something deeply spiritual in understanding this process. You were not created to live in constant dissatisfaction. The blessings in your life are not accidental, and they are not meant to be ignored. But if you do not train your mind to recognize them, they will slowly fade into the background of your awareness, not because they disappeared, but because your attention moved away from them. Gratitude brings your attention back. It reminds you, again and again, that even in imperfect circumstances, there is still something to acknowledge, something to appreciate, something that was given to you without being earned, a beating heart, a functioning body, another sunrise you were allowed to witness. And when you repeat this awareness daily, something emotional begins to awaken within you. A sense of humility, a sense of connection, a quiet realization that life is not owed, it is granted. This realization softens the heart. It reduces arrogance, reduces comparison, reduces the constant need for more. Not because ambition disappears, but because it becomes grounded. You begin to move forward not from a place of emptiness, but from a place of appreciation, and that changes everything. Because a mind conditioned with gratitude does not break easily. When challenges come, and they will, you do not collapse under them the way you once might have. There is a stability within you built through repetition, a pattern of thinking that says, there is still something here, there is still something good, there is still a reason to continue. This is not denial of hardship. It is strength within it, and over time your identity begins to reflect this conditioning. You become someone who looks for meaning, someone who sees lessons, someone who carries calmness where others carry panic. Not because your life is easier, but because your mind has been trained differently. And it all begins with what you choose to repeat day after day, morning after morning, thought after thought, because the mind learns through consistency. And whatever you consistently feed it, it will eventually become. You cannot be deeply grateful and fearful at the same time. Fear and anxiety do not arrive loudly at first. They begin as small thoughts, quiet whispers about the future. What if this goes wrong? What if I'm not enough? What if everything falls apart? And if these thoughts are entertained, they grow stronger, they take up space in your mind, and before you realize it, they begin to shape how you feel, how you act, and how you see the world. But there is a powerful truth most people overlook. Your mind cannot fully hold two opposing emotional states at the same time. When your heart is filled with genuine gratitude, real, conscious appreciation, fear begins to lose its place. Not because your problems disappear, but because your focus shifts away from uncertainty and toward what is already secure. Fear lives in the future. Gratitude lives in the present. And when you bring your awareness into the present moment, you interrupt the cycle of anxiety. Think about it deeply. When you pause and truly reflect on what you have right now, the breath in your lungs, the ability to stand, to think, to try again, you create a sense of grounding. You remind yourself that in this moment, you are still here, still capable, still given another chance. And there is something deeply spiritual in that awareness. Every breath you take is not guaranteed, it is given. Every moment you are allowed to continue is a form of mercy, a form of care that you did not create for yourself. And when you recognize that, sincerely, your heart begins to soften. The tightness in your chest begins to ease. The constant pressure in your mind begins to quiet, because fear feeds on disconnection, on the feeling that you are alone, unsupported, uncertain. But gratitude reconnections you. It reminds you that you are not empty, not abandoned, not without provision. Even in difficulty, there is something sustaining you. And when that realization becomes real, not just words, but something you feel, anxiety begins to lose its grip. You start to understand that not everything is within your control, and that is not always something to fear. In fact, there is relief in it, because if everything depended on you alone, the weight would be unbearable. Gratitude shifts that weight. It teaches you to trust, to accept, to recognize that while you may not control every outcome, you have been given enough strength to face what comes. You begin to see that you have already survived days you once thought you wouldn't. You have already overcome moments that once felt impossible. And if you were carried through those times, what makes this moment any different? This awareness builds a quiet kind of courage. Not loud, not aggressive, but steady. The kind of strength that allows you to breathe calmly in uncertain situations. The kind of peace that does not come from perfect circumstances, but from a grounded heart. Because when gratitude becomes your habit, your mind no longer immediately reacts with fear. It pauses. It looks again. It searches for what is still good, what is still stable, what is still present. And in doing so, it weakens the hold of anxiety. You stop magnifying what could go wrong and start recognizing what is already right. You stop feeling consumed by the unknown and start feeling anchored in what has already been given to you. And emotionally, something powerful begins to unfold. The restlessness begins to fade. The overthinking begins to slow. The heaviness begins to lift. Not all at once, not instantly, but gradually as gratitude becomes more familiar than fear. Because the more you train your mind to return to appreciation, the less space you leave for anxious thoughts to take over. And over time, you realize something profound. Peace was not something you needed to search for outside of you. It was something waiting to be uncovered within you through the simple act of recognizing what you already have. A grateful mind creates a successful life before results appear. Most people are taught to be. Believe that success is something external, something you achieve, something you reach, something you finally hold in your hands after a long struggle. They think success begins when the results arrive, when the money comes, when the recognition appears, when life finally looks the way they imagined. But this understanding is incomplete, because long before success is visible on the outside, it is formed within. It begins in the unseen world of thoughts, beliefs, and perspective. It begins in how you interpret your current situation, how you respond to what you have, and how you choose to see your life before anything changes. And this is where gratitude becomes powerful. A grateful mind does not wait for success to feel fulfilled. It does not say, I will be thankful when everything improves. Instead, it says, I recognize what I have now, and I will build from it. This shift may seem subtle, but it changes everything. Because when your mind is rooted in appreciation, you stop operating from a place of emptiness. You stop chasing success out of desperation, insecurity, or comparison. Instead, you begin to move with clarity, with purpose, and with a sense of inner stability. You begin to build not because you feel lacking, but because you feel capable. And there is something deeply spiritual in this realization. Everything you have at this moment, your abilities, your opportunities, even your challenges, has been placed in your life with meaning. Nothing is random. Nothing is without purpose. And when you approach your life with gratitude, you begin to respect what you have been given. You use your time more wisely. You value your skills more deeply. You approach your responsibilities with sincerity. Because gratitude makes you aware that what you have today is already enough to begin, and that awareness transforms how you act. A person who feels lacking hesitates. They doubt themselves. They wait for the perfect moment that never comes. But a person who feels grateful takes action, even if the step is small, even if the progress is slow, even if the results are not immediate. Because they are not focused only on the outcome, they are connected to the process. And over time, this creates momentum. Action leads to growth. Growth leads to confidence. Confidence leads to opportunity. And suddenly, what once felt far away begins to take shape. But here is the truth most people never see. The success that eventually becomes visible was already present within you in the form of mindset. It was there in your discipline. It was there in your patience. It was there in your ability to remain grounded even when nothing seemed to be changing. And all of this is strengthened through gratitude, because gratitude keeps you steady when results are delayed. It keeps you focused when distractions appear. It keeps you humble when progress begins. It reminds you that your journey is not just about reaching a destination, but about becoming the kind of person who can handle it. And emotionally, this creates a different experience of life. You feel less pressure to prove yourself, less need to compare your timeline with others, less frustration when things don't happen instantly, because your sense of progress is no longer dependent only on external validation. It is rooted in internal alignment. You begin to measure your success differently, in your consistency, in your growth, in your ability to stay committed even when it's difficult. And this kind of success cannot be taken away easily, because it is not built on circumstances. It is built on character. A character shaped by awareness, strengthened by patience, and guided by gratitude. So while others are waiting for results to feel successful, you are already becoming successful through the way you think, the way you act, and the way you appreciate what has already been placed in your hands. And when the external results finally appear, they are not surprising. They are simply the reflection of what was built within you all along. You become what you consistently think upon waking. The moment you wake up is not just the start of another day, it is the beginning of becoming someone. Before the world speaks to you, before responsibilities begin, before distractions take over, there is a quiet space where your mind is soft, open, and deeply receptive. In that space, your first thoughts are not just passing ideas, they are instructions. They begin shaping how you see yourself, how you feel, and ultimately, who you are becoming. Most people underestimate this moment. They wake up and immediately allow random thoughts to enter. Worry is about the future, regrets from the past, pressure from expectations. And without realizing it, they repeat this pattern every single day. Over time, these repeated thoughts do not remain temporary. They become identity, because the mind does not separate thought from truth when it is repeated often enough. If you begin each morning thinking, I am behind, I am not enough, I can't handle this, your mind starts to accept these ideas as reality. Your actions begin to reflect them. Your confidence weakens. Your decisions become smaller. And slowly, you begin to live out the identity you have been rehearsing every morning. But there is another path. When you wake up and consciously guide your thoughts, when you choose gratitude, awareness, and intention, you begin to shape a different identity. Not an imagined one, but a cultivated one. A version of yourself built through repetition, through consistency, through deliberate thinking. And this is where transformation begins. Because identity is not created in one big moment. It is built in small, repeated ones, especially in the morning. When your first thoughts are grounded in gratitude, you begin your day with a sense of stability. You remind yourself that you have been given another chance, not by accident, but with purpose. There is something deeply spiritual in realizing that your existence today is not guaranteed, yet it has been granted. That awareness changes how you see yourself. You are no longer just reacting to life, you are participating in it with intention. You begin to feel a sense of responsibility toward your time, your actions, your potential, not out of pressure, but out of appreciation. And when appreciation becomes your starting point, your identity begins to shift. You start to see yourself as someone capable because you recognize what you already have. You begin to see yourself as resilient because you remember what you have already survived. You begin to see yourself as guided because you realize your life is not without meaning. These are not empty affirmations. They are realizations rooted in awareness. And as you repeat these thoughts day after day, they begin to settle deep within you. They move from your conscious mind into your subconscious, where your habits, reactions, and beliefs are formed. This is how identity is built, not through occasional motivation, but through consistent thinking, Every morning becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. If you start your day with negativity, you reinforce a limited version of yourself. If you start your day with gratitude, you strengthen a grounded, aware, and purposeful version of yourself. And over time, this repetition becomes powerful. Your actions begin to align with your thoughts. Your habits begin to reflect your beliefs. Your life begins to mirror your internal identity. And emotionally, something shifts within you. You feel less lost because you are no longer drifting through your thoughts. Less overwhelmed because your mind is not scattered from the start. More centered because you begin your day with intention instead of reaction. There is a quiet strength in knowing that you are shaping yourself each morning, that who you become is not left to chance, but influenced by what you allow into your mind at the very beginning of your day. And when you truly understand this, mornings are no longer routine. They become meaningful, because in those first few moments, you are not just waking up, you are deciding who you are going to be. It is not a feeling, it is a choice practiced every morning. Many people wait to feel grateful. They believe gratitude will come naturally when life improves. When problems disappear, then everything finally falls into place. They treat it like an emotion that arrives on its own, something that depends on circumstances. But that is why it rarely stays, because feelings are unstable. They rise and fall with situations. One good moment can lift them. One difficulty can take them away. If gratitude is left as a feeling, it becomes temporary present, only when life is easy, absent when life becomes challenging. But true gratitude was never, or meant to depend on ease. It is a discipline, a conscious, repeated choice you make, especially when it is not easy. When you wake up in the morning, your mind does not automatically lean toward appreciation. It often drifts toward concern, toward pressure, toward everything waiting for you in the day ahead. That is its habit. That is what it has been trained to do. And discipline is what interrupts that pattern. Before your thoughts run freely, before the noise of the day begins, you pause and you choose. Not because you feel like it, but because you understand its importance. You choose to acknowledge what is already present, even if your heart feels heavy, even if your situation is not ideal, even if your mind tries to pull you toward worry. This is where gratitude becomes powerful, when it is chosen, not when it is convenient. There is something deeply spiritual in this act. Because when you choose gratitude without being forced by perfect conditions, you are recognizing that your life still holds value, even in its imperfections. You are acknowledging that the blessings you have are not dependent on your mood. They exist regardless of how you feel. Your breath is still there. Your heart is still beating. Another day has still been written for you. And when you consciously recognize this, you develop a different kind of awareness, a grounded awareness. You begin to understand that gratitude is not about ignoring difficulty. It is about seeing beyond it. It is about refusing to let hardship blind you from what is still good, still present, still meaningful. And that requires discipline. Because the easier path is to complain. The easier path is to focus on what is missing. The easier path is to let your thoughts follow negativity without resistance. But the disciplined mind does something different. It redirects. Again and again. Every morning, it again. Every morning, it returns to appreciation. Not perfectly, not effortlessly, but consistently. And over time, that consistency builds strength. You begin to notice that your reactions change. Situations that once frustrated you deeply begin to affect you less. Delays that once felt unbearable become manageable. Challenges that once discouraged you become something you can face with patience. Not because life has become easier, but because you have become stronger, and that strength comes from repetition. Choosing gratitude once will not transform you. Choosing it occasionally will not sustain you, but choosing it daily, especially in the quiet moments when no one sees, when no one is reminding you, when it is purely your decision. That is what reshapes your mind. That is what builds stability within you. And emotionally, this discipline creates a quiet shift. You feel less controlled by circumstances, less dependent on external validation, less shaken by what you cannot control. because you have trained your mind to return to something steady, something constant, a recognition that no matter how complex life becomes, there is always something you can acknowledge, something you can appreciate, something that reminds you you are still here, still given, still capable of moving forward and through this daily discipline. Gratitude stops being something you occasionally feel and becomes something you consistently live. Remember this. Each morning is a gift, but only a few truly open it. Wake up grateful, and you will begin to see life differently. Think differently. Act differently. And when you change the way you begin your day, you begin to change the direction of your life. So tomorrow morning, wake up and give thanks. Because that simple act may be the turning point of everything.